Thank you, everybody, for staying on. Let's try and kind of make this very interesting for all of you. We represent a business that is largely in small data. So what are we doing in this discussion around, fairly big data sets, which are kind of, available now and are being harnessed in variety of ways to connect with consumers as such. But at the same time, almost all speakers mentioned that there is a challenge in that despite all the data being there, there is a lacunae in that one doesn't really know whether the consumer is likely to be using a particular category a lot more or not as such. So somebody who's available on Facebook or Google as such, there might be some dispositions that are available about them. But there could be certain other instances where there are no dispositions available of these people. Similarly, there are a lot of companies, particularly in the FMCG space, who do not really have as rich a first-party data as, say, for example, a BFSI entity as such. And therefore, the need to enrich and to ensure that the shampoo ad campaign that Bhaskar was talking about is really delivered to the most likely set of users who are likely to be using a premium shampoo is something that we can potentially do using small data, which can be integrated with big data. And that is something that we've been kind of, taking baby steps in. But to my mind, this is something that is going to be a very important space as we move into a cookieless world. As cookies kind of disappear, there is going to be that much more of an imperative to be able to enrich audiences better using multiple data sources, including small data sets. Just about 4 or 5 years ago, we were talking about the fact that data is everywhere. There is data which is social media, where people are talking about what they have experienced, are asking about products and services. There are platforms that are available where people are increasingly making purchase choices as such. So really, a lot of the information that is typically available through market research data is actually available in these data silos, and it is only a question of being able to connect it together to be able to deliver deep consumer insights. But the reality is the silos are not really breaking down as fast as we'd want to. In fact, the concerns around data privacy have become that much more amplified, and as a result, there is a need to be able to bring together these different data silos, and market research data, which is all consent-based, sits at the center of this ecosystem, which allows for easier integration of these different data sets in a fairly cost-efficient manner. And if you look at the Indian market, there was a time when people said that if that audience is available on the internet, then we know that this is a certain type of product and service that these people are more likely to be using. Today, we are looking at close to about 700 million people who are active on internet and actively consuming variety of things. It could be entertainment content, it could be product-related content, it could be social communications, etc. A lot of that is literally the entire population of the country. We are heading towards a world where close to about 900 million people are going to be active internet users in the country. Literally almost all adults as such in the country across urban and rural. So in that scenario, the medium is no longer a differentiator in itself, and it is therefore even more imperative now than it was in the past to be able to select the right audience to send out a message in the right context for them to connect with the brands as such. The point that was made earlier, which is performance marketing is one thing, which is to be able to identify people who are in the marketplace and therefore, to talk to them when they are, say, at a mall about a particular offer in order to, maximize that particular trip. But it is important to be able to communicate to the right consumer in the right context at the right moment as such. And that is, to my mind, going to be very important for brands to be successful in times to come. Also, what's happening is the time spent is going up on the internet, which basically implies that the digital space and the physical space is kind of, in a sense, now very it's kind of complementary. People are spending a lot of time on digital, but they're seeking information. They might be going out and seeking more information about products and services on other spaces which are not necessarily available. So it is possible that I could have seen an ad on television, on linear television, and then I have gone to Google search or Facebook and I have checked out a particular product. Then I have probably written to a few friends, taken some information, and subsequently I've gone to some website. So now we are in a world where physical and digital are kind of working together, and there is a need to understand the consumer in his or her totality, which is where all is he or she consuming media. And therefore, to ensure that the spends as such are optimized across traditional and digital media, and not just, it's not just about digital, but it is about how best to reach out to the consumer, in a fashion where monies are not wasted. And that is something that we should be able to do, and which is what we are working towards. Consumers also are using multiple devices. So the same consumer who's on a smartphone might also be consuming content on a connected TV, might be consuming content on a laptop. So multiple devices are being used, and all of those devices are creating their own unique identifiers for the consumer. But that's the same consumer, so there could be wastage that is happening there too, and which is something that needs to be understood, mapped out for a better understanding of what is the unduplicated reach for your communication and spends. And how are we going to do that? There are two things that I'm going to be talking about, but broadly what we are looking at is a world where there is going to be a lot more of first-party data assets that market research agencies will also create, which is syndicated data sets which are owned by market research agencies, smaller data sets, but deep and rich data sets which allow for such integrations to be possible, firstly. Secondly, what we will also see is a lot more of passive measurement of the consumer. Again, smaller sets, but with watertight consent, and that data set is available for the purpose of integration and enrichment. On personalization, this is a use case that we have where we were working with the audio OTT platform which wanted to enrich their internal data set with better audience insights as such, as also to be able to integrate their audience into larger media plans and kind of enrich their customer data set with things such as, say, for example, NCCS, which is something that is used extensively in defining target audiences. So what we did was we built a mechanism where we firstly took our two syndicated assets that we have available to us, where we've got an OTT panel that we are running, we've got a TGI, which is a survey-based system that we're running. We've integrated the two using appropriate fusion hooks as such. Then what we did was, we have the OTT consumption behavior coming in from the OTT panel. We've got dispositions coming in from TGI, which we've integrated with the first-party data that the client has using certain hooks as such in a clean room in a virtual environment, which ensure that their data, the customer data, doesn't go out for the purpose of integration and allowing, therefore, for sharper insights about the consumer in that environment. There's an entire process to it. I won't go into the details, but essentially what we did was we set it up on a clean room. We looked at overlaps and built the entire model using our first-party data assets, the syndicated data assets. So these are some of the profiles that we had, which is, for example, the kind of dispositions that this particular OTT brand users were more likely to be displaying in terms of habits, and therefore, what kind of merchandise to be given to them, what kind of communication to be used to actually connect with the consumer there. And of course, linking it to a variety of product categories, what kind of categories, what kind of, within that, whether it's premium or, what specific subcategories are being looked at as such and used by these people was something that we did. There's another case that I've got around purchase journey where we are setting up a passive panel where we are looking at understanding consumer exposure to advertising and video content, on variety of OTT, including YouTube, and similarly looking at their other search behavior, say Google search or search inside e-commerce apps, and therefore create a single view of the consumer. And that's something that allows for very rich understanding of consumers across multiple touch points, and at the same time do it in a manner which is safe and allow for these sets of this particular sample to be used as a seed for a variety of lookalike modeling, and therefore richer understanding of the consumer journey across a much larger data set that's available on, say, a Meta platform or any other such platform. So I'll not dwell too much in this on this particular slide. This is some of the work that we've done where we looked at advertising exposure on platform 1 versus platform 2 firstly. For a particular ad, this was done earlier this year, where we looked at platform 1, which delivered a reach of around 14%. We were able to map out the profile of the audience, in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of NCCS, in terms of a whole host of vectors about the consumer. We were also able to understand what has been the lift as such in terms of specific actions, incidents of the app being opened after having been exposed to the communication as such. So we are now moving to a world where passive is going to become that much more important. It is going to become important for big data to be integrated with small data for deeper understanding of the consumer, to be able to understand their behavior across multiple media, and therefore ensure that all wastage is trimmed out. Thank you.